Hello, my name is PJ Capozzi. I am Superintendent of Schools for Meridian 223. This presentation is designed to give an overview of the levy process and to describe in detail the 2021 levy, which will be used for fiscal year 2023. To start off, what is the levy? The levy is the process through which the school district is able to procure taxpayer dollars. The levy has multiple rules, which I will explain throughout, which make it a little bit complicated, but I hope to explain it in a way that makes sense to anyone listening. To start with a levy, what we must first understand is what is our EAV, Equalized Assessed Valuation. The EAV is complicated when it comes to levying because we don't actually have the number. Illinois is one of the few states that operates like this. So we start with the existing number, which would be the EAV from the previous year, and then we get estimates from each of our two county assessors, Winnebago and Ogle County, and try to make our best guess as to what our EAV will be so that we can issue an appropriate levy. As you can see, historically, our EAV has kind of bottomed out in the 14, 15, 16 area, and it is now at what is truly its all-time high. So in 08, we were at our previous high water mark, or 08, 09, and then as the economy suffered, so too did our EAV. As the economy has rebounded, our EAV has continued to increase. There's good and bad news with this. The good news is with an increase in EAV means houses are worth more, which means we're able to secure more money in terms of property tax in order to fund schools. The bad news with the increase of EAV like this is that there is no clear influx of money as a result of commercial, industrial, business enterprise within our district. So as the property values have gone up, which everyone wants their house to be worth more money, the problem is that the tax burden still lays on the backs of typical Joe and Jill homeowner, as well as our local farmers or landowners. So what happens once we have an estimate for the EAV? So this year, our EAV is projected to go up by 2.4% when I combine the estimates that I've received from Ogle and Winnebago County. Then we determine the levy by fund. And when we do so, it's important to remember that different funds operate in different ways. So as I go through the next handful of slides, and I'll go through them fairly quickly because once you kind of get the process, it's pretty self-explanatory. I will talk about how different funds operate differently from each other. Fund 10, this is where we get the lion's share of our money in from taxes, and this is where we spend the lion's share of our money. So our rate is capped at 3.48. So what that means is we take that 3.48 and we multiply that times what our projected EAV is, so in this case 206 million, and then divide that number by 100. So in this case, you'll see that this will procure us around $7.17 million in the ed fund. This process is repeated in the operations and buildings and grounds fund, but what you'll see is that the rate is different. So instead of having 3.48 as the rate, our rate is capped at 0.5. So the same process, 206 million times 0.5 divided by 100 procures about $1.03 million. Now, bond and interest, as soon as we kind of get in a rhythm and understand how we figure out how we're going to assert the levy, bond and interest is an interesting proposition. So bond and interest, we are literally allowed to levy for the dollar amount necessary to pay off our long-term debt. So when we do large repairs, which you will see, it's typically for us in health, life, safety. So we do that about every decade. Once we do that, we basically finance that over a 10-year period. So the same way you would think about a car payment. And so we owe $1.649 million this year. So that's exactly what we levy for, and that's exactly what we get. Now, Fund 40 bounces back to the way that we were doing it before for education and for buildings and grounds. And so the rate cap for transportation is 0.2, and you will see that brings forth about $400,000. Now, Fund 50 goes back to the way bond and interest was, meaning we get to levy for whatever is necessary to cover our costs for Social Security and IMRF, which is our retirement funds for our non-certified employees. Non-certified means non-administrator, non-teacher. This year we will capture $555,000 in these levies. Fund 60 is what comes in as a result of capital projects. So these are impact fees. As a district, we have no control over this. So we budget to receive nothing, and we only receive something if there's new construction within the district. Fund 70 is working cash. So within working cash, our rate is capped at 0.05. If we did the 206 million times the 0.05 and divide that by 100, that's about $103,000. We're only asking for $80,000 this year in order to keep the rate as manageable and as low as possible. Fund 80 is governed by what is called a risk management plan. So we go through a process to determine our level of risk in a number of different ways and the number of time our employees spend directed toward risk mitigation, and that comes up with a risk management plan that is reviewed by our attorneys and then approved by the board. In Fund 80, this is another fund where we could levy up to $1 million, and we choose not to, again, to try to keep our rates as low as possible for the taxpayers. Fund 90 is fire and safety. So when we do health, life, safety projects, as mentioned before, we first pay for it out of Fund 90 before we have to take out debt. So this is when we have anything that is not up to code or presenting a risk facility-wise, we pay for it out of health, life, safety. This past year, we did a project at Highland Elementary that helped abate asbestos that was in the ceiling so that we could replace some lighting. As a result of it having asbestos in the ceiling, we were able to use health, life, safety funds for that. Some other areas we levy that don't have specific funds, all of these kind of funnel into Fund 10, would be lease or rent. So we typically use our lease fund to lease technology. So in normal years where there's not a lot of federal money coming in to supplement this is how we replace our Chromebooks on an annual basis. Leveraging this fund is how we were able to largely go from having very few computers in the district to being a one-to-one district last year at the student level, and we were one-to-one in terms of devices compared to students about 3 years ago as a use of this fund. So education, again, this folds into Fund 10. The rate is capped at 0.04, and we capture everything we can within this fund. Just a quick summary and totals of this levy that I am presenting to the board, hopefully for approval, is that we are basing the EAV on the estimates of our 2 county assessors, and we are estimating that at $206 million. Based on the levy as presented, we will be requesting $11,783,000 from our taxpayers. We expect to receive all of that money. We expect the tax rate to be around 5.72. For reference, that tax rate was 6.07 in FY17. So as the EAV has gone up, we have done everything we can to remain fiscally responsible and take some of that burden off of our local taxpayers. So as an overall summary, we will increase our revenue by 2.3% this year with an overall 2.4% increase in EAV, which is why we project our tax rate to go down just a little bit this year. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this. Again, my name is PJ Capozzi. You can contact me via email at pcapozzi@mail.meridian223.org or via phone at 815-980-0310. Thank you, and make it a great day.